So, I want to talk a little bit about two concepts that are pretty closely related to resilience: grit and growth mindset. We'll start off with an overview of Angela Duckworth's work on grit, and then we'll talk a little bit about Carol Dweck's research on mindset. We'll think about how these concepts relate to us and to the topic of resilience. If you're interested in reading more about grit and mindset, check out our resources page to get more information. Let's start by talking about Angela Duckworth and her research on grit. She defines grit as passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is living life like it is a marathon, not a sprint. Grit means sticking with your future day in and day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years. How do you see grit show up for you in your life? How are you gritty? What are some long-term goals that you have pushed yourself to reach? How do you live your life like a marathon? Perseverance is a very important part. You can't have grit or resilience without focusing on the long term. But it is also very difficult to have resilience without passion. Passion is so important because it is the fire. It is the steam in the engine. It is the energy force that pushes you, motivates you to keep at it. One of my passions is helping people thrive in their lives. I was in 5th grade when I first discovered what psychologists do, and I remember that I was like, yes, that is it. That is what I want to do with my life. I had found my fire. Maybe you were like me, and maybe you were able to find some of your passions easily, but maybe you feel like you're running out of steam lately. Let's take a second and think about your passion, your fire. What are the 3 things that motivate you in your life? What are the things that motivate you in your life? What are the 3 things that are keeping you alive right now? What sets your life on fire? What ignites your passion? If you're having trouble, that's okay. These are tough questions. Let's think about it another way. When was the last time that you experienced flow? Can you remember a time that you got so absorbed in something that you lost track of time? What were you doing? If you and I were talking over coffee, what could you talk about for hours? What gets you fired up? When you're looking for something to read or to listen to, what are the topics that tempt you to check out a book or an article or a podcast? Maybe you have found your fire in the work that you do or the hobbies that you pursue, or maybe you find your fire in your relationships or in self-exploration. Finding our fire is important because it motivates us to keep going through challenges. Another thing that is very important to consider when trying to develop grit and resilience is how we interpret mistakes and failure. What do we tell ourselves when we hit rough patches? How do we perceive challenges? The way that we assess these situations, the way that we think about mistakes or failures in our lives can be like baking soda or gas on our fire. Close your eyes for a minute and think about a mentor in your life. I'll give you a minute to call someone to mind. This can be a teacher or a coach or a boss, someone that gave you feedback and helped you to grow and develop. Think about how they responded to your mistakes or failures. Did they say things like, you blew it? There's no coming back from that? Did they say things like, you blew it? There's no coming back from that? Or why don't you just quit? Or did they offer encouragement when you stumbled? Did they say things like, you'll get it next time? That's okay. Just dust yourself off and get back up and try again. If the person you're thinking of was a mentor that you remember in a positive way, I'm guessing they responded with some form of, that's okay, don't give up. What comes to your mind when I say mistake? When people around you make a mistake, what do you tell them? How were mistakes handled at your house when you were growing up? What do you think about when I say failure? What comes to mind when I say that word, failure? What do you say to the people around you about failure? When you or someone in your life tries to do something and fails or falls short, how do you react? Do you ever feel like you need to be first or best or at least successful or it's not worth trying at all? I'll be honest, I do not like to make mistakes. I feel ashamed and awful when I mess up. I hate to fail, and I sometimes feel like failure is a sign that I should just give up. Failure can threaten to put my fire out, but I am trying to be more gritty. I know that gritty people interpret failure not as a sign that something is too hard, that they will never get it, that they should give up. Gritty people see failure as a cue to try harder. I've thought about this a lot as I've been working on this project. It is often my first inclination to shut down or beat myself up when I make a mistake, or when I just can't get something to work. Learning about grit has really helped me to be more resilient in these situations. It's given me another option, another way to think about mistakes and failure. To see them not as a sign that I can't do it, but signals that I just need to keep going and approach the problem in a different way. I've also found Carol Dweck's work on fixed and growth mindsets to be really helpful as I work on building my resilience. According to Dr. Dweck, a fixed mindset is the belief that talent or ability is the only way to excel. People that have a fixed mindset believe that fixed traits are what lead to success. You are either good or bad at something. Nothing you can do about it. Traits are set in stone. People with a growth mindset, on the other hand, believe that intellect, talent, and natural ability are just the starting point. They believe that it takes hard work and effort to get ahead. Let's reflect for a second. What are things you do well? What are the things you praise yourself for? When you do something well, do you believe that it is your natural ability that helped you succeed? I did really well on that project. I'm such a talented architect. Do you ever fall into this way of thinking? Do you ever feel like you reach your goals because of a natural ability or a fixed trait? What about when you're having trouble reaching your goals? Do you ever feel like you just don't have what you need to reach them? Like you just weren't born with the right stuff to get there? When have you encountered a fixed mindset in yourself or in someone else? When have you been able to motivate yourself to work hard and put forth effort to reach your goals? How did you do that? Did you use a growth mindset? Were you able to recognize that your ability to succeed wasn't just based on some innate attribute? Were you able to push yourself because you realized that you were going to have to work hard to get to where you wanted to go? When we realize that we don't have to have some special talent to thrive, when we recognize that it's effort and hard work that we need to get ahead, we see that we already have everything we need to flourish. Effort is something we all have available to us. Resilient people are gritty. They are passionate about their goals and persevere over the long term to reach them. They do not shut down when they make a mistake or fail. Instead, they interpret mistakes and failure as opportunities to grow. Resilient people have a growth mindset. They know that talent and intellect and natural ability are just the starting point. They recognize that effort is the key to getting ahead. So we've talked about a lot today. We've assessed what we give ourselves passes on and what we hold ourselves accountable for. We've assessed the deposits and withdrawals to our resilience account, and we've talked about how to assess challenges in a way that builds our resilience. Next, we'll talk about ways to support ourselves as we grow our resilience.